Welcome back to the Greg Schreffler Show, where we talk about anything and everything that has God in it. Why? Because we gotta. And this is now episode 2. And today we're going to go deep. Ancient scriptures, forbidden books, and a military encounter in the mountains of Afghanistan that will leave you wondering, are the giants still among us? That's right, for episode 2, we're going to talk about the Nephilim. That's our topic for today. Research is from 1 Enoch, also known as the Book of Enoch, the works of Dr. Chuck Missler, works of Dr. Michael S. Heiser, and your friendly neighborhood internet. So where do we start? Where should we start? Well, at the beginning, of course, Genesis. Genesis 6, 1 through 4. Translation I have is the NIV. So just follow along the best you can. If you have a different translation, that's fine. When human beings began to increase in number on the earth, and daughters were born to them, and the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit will not contend with humans forever. They are mortal, and their days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. All right, let's break this down. The first words of interest are sons of God. What does that mean? Missler interprets it, or he says that the Hebrew translation for sons of God is a direct creation of God, air quotes, or angels, air quotes. Also, if you look at Job 1:6, it says, One day the angels came to present themselves before the Lord. And the word angels there can also be interpreted as sons of God. Now let's look at a couple of other words in here. The next one from verse 2 is married. Missler says that a better translation for married is taken or took. They took them. These babes didn't have a choice. They were taken. Next, in verse 3, we have, My spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Your translation may say, My spirit will not remain with humans forever, for they are corrupt. And then in verse 4, the topic of today, the Nephilim. What does the Nephilim mean? Missler says that yes, it does mean giants, but the more accurate translation is fallen ones. So let's just kind of recap real quick here what we have. We have these sons of God, or these angelic beings, come down to earth, have sexual relations with that woman or those women, and they have children. They interbreed, I guess you could say. So now let's look at this. In Greek mythology, Titans were their giants, and that was a result of interbreeding between the Greek gods and humans. So what's fascinating is that every culture has its own interpretation of biblical activity or biblical events. Every culture has its own interpretation of the flood. If you've ever watched the show Ancient Apocalypse with Graham Hancock, you will understand this as he delves into these mysteries. So where do we go from here? I mean, because when you read the scripture, it just kind of carries on, la-di-da. But what just happened here? You're telling me that these beings came down, had sexual intercourse with these women, and because of that, they had these children that end up being an abomination, and the children those are the Nephilim, the giants. But why doesn't the Bible say anything more about that? Well, that's where 1 Enoch comes in, also commonly called the Book of Enoch. Heiser says that it's more correctly called 1 Enoch. What is 1 Enoch? It's a Jewish apocalyptic text written between 300 and 100 BC. No, it's not part of the canon. However, it heavily influenced early Jewish and Christian theology, and it's quoted in the Bible. What? It is? Yep. In Jude. Jude chapter 1, verses 14 and 15. Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied about them. See, the Lord is coming with thousands upon thousands of his holy ones, to judge everyone and to convict all of them of all their ungodly acts they have committed and their ungodliness, and all of the defiant words ungodly sinners have spoken against him. Right there, Jude makes a reference to the Book of Enoch, or 1 Enoch. Now, as you continue to read in the Book of Enoch and study it, you will hear the word watchers. Watchers is also another name given to the fallen ones. Watchers, I'm guessing, is probably their original name because that was their job description. So the watcher's job was to watch over mankind. I said, wait a minute, Greg, where are you getting this watcher business? Okay, so the book of of Enoch has watchers in it, but is there any scriptural reference to it? As a matter of fact, there is. Daniel 4:13. In the visions I saw while lying in bed, I looked, and there before me was a holy one, a messenger. So the translation for messenger, it can translate to watchman. 200 watchers, and they become corrupt when they lust after the human women. The watchers take the women, and the women birth the Nephilim. The Nephilim teach forbidden knowledge like sorcery, witchcraft, weapons of war, cosmetics, dyes, astrology, signs of heaven. And remember that Jude 1:14-15 cites Enoch. So it affirms the authority of the Watcher's story even in Scripture. So you know what happens next. The corruption brings judgment, and the judgment in this particular instance is the flood. Genesis 7:23. Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. People and animals and the creatures that move along the ground and the birds were wiped from the earth. Only Noah was left and those with him in the ark. Okay, well that's good, right? We got rid of the Nephilim. Problem solved, huh? There's 3 haunting words. Did you catch it? Go back to Genesis 6, verse 4. What does it say there? It says, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward. Ooh. Now wait a minute, Greg. How do you know that they were on the earth afterward? I mean, what's the evidence that they were around after the flood? Let's look at Numbers 13:33. We saw the Nephilim there. The descendants of Enoch come from the Nephilim. We seem like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we look the same to them. These are the spies coming back from the land they're supposed to take, and they're giving an account to Moses. Now let's look at 2 Samuel 21:20. In still another battle which took place at Gath, there was a huge man with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all. But how? How did the Nephilim survive the flood? Every living creature was wiped out. Well, I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but the Heiser and Missler have a theory here. There's a couple of different theories. I'm just going to share the one that they have because they blow up the other theories. But you don't really know. Every living thing could that mean that everything God created was wiped out? Because God didn't create the Nephilim. So the theory that Heiser and Missler support, as well as one Enoch supports, is the second incursion theory. This means that other fallen angels came after the flood and repeated the sin of Genesis 6. I have an idea. I don't even know if I want to call it a theory because I don't have the word doctor in my name. But suppose, when the Nephilim died, they released this evil spirit. It's also theorized that spirit that it's released is where demonic spirits come from. The same spirits that plague us today and the same spirits that Christ drove out in his time. So anyway, what if the spirits are hovering around during the flood, and then after the waters recede, they go and find their bodies and re-inhabit them, reanimate them? I don't know. Is that kind of corny? Anyway, it's just an idea. But check out the cycle of the Nephilim. So the Nephilim, when they died, they released this demonic spirit, and it's called Rephaim, and that translates to dead, ghost, spirit, or the dead ones. So these guys are the OGs of the Walking Dead. All right, looking again at Numbers 13:33, descendants of Enoch were Goliath and his 4 brothers. So yeah, if you're a Christian, you should be tracking this no problem at all. But I bet you haven't heard this from the pulpit, have you? Very few want to tackle this Genesis 6:1-4, and it's also misinterpreted many times of what actually happened, because it's just too, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Too heavy? Too weird? But according to the works of these men, Missler and Heiser, and one Enoch, this happened. So now let's look at 2 Samuel 21:16-22. Now we did read 2 Samuel 21:20, but let's expand our reading a bit further. And Ishbinab, one of the descendants of Rapha means giants. Another way to say giants. Whose bronze spearhead weighed 300 shekels, and who was armed with a new sword. He said he would kill David, but Abishai, son of Zeruiah, came to David's rescue. He struck the Philistine down and killed him. Then David's men swore to him, saying, never again will you go out with us into battle, so that the lamp of Israel will not be extinguished. This is a pretty close call. It would be kind of a cool filming sequence here where it's really dramatic. Enoch, where King David almost got axed. Okay, verse 18. In the course of time, there was another battle with the Philistines at Gob. At that time, Sibbecai the Hushathite killed Sab, one of the descendants of Rapha, so another giant. In another battle with the Philistines at Gob, Elhanan, son of Jair the Bethlehemite, killed the brother of Goliath the Gittite, who had a spear with a shaft like a weaver's rod. And then verse 20 we read moments ago, and you'll also see there he was a descendant of Rapha, the Mr. 24 and all. And then verse 22, these four were descendants of Rapha and Gath, and they fell at the hands of David and his mighty men. Let's do a side note. What is a weaver's rod? Also called a beam. In ancient times, a weaver's beam was a large, sturdy wooden rod used in looms for weaving cloth. It would be long and thick, often as wide as a man's arm or more, span the width of the loom, tightly supporting the warped threads, the vertical strings in the weaving, be constructed to withstand tension and resist bending, usually made of strong hardwood. So a spear shaft like a weaver's beam means thick, much wider than a normal spear, heavy, extremely difficult for a normal person to lift, let alone hurl in battle. So this reinforces the idea that these giants like Goliath or Lamai were not just tall, they were monstrously strong. Now check this out. Let's look at something here. The iron point weight. 1 Samuel 17:7. 1 Samuel 17:7, describing Goliath. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's rod, which we learned what that is now, and its iron point weighed 600 shekels. That's 15 pounds. That's heavier than a modern sledgehammer head. And this is just for the spear tip. By contrast, a Roman pilum spear tip, which weighed about 2 pounds total. So go grab your sledgehammer and try to hurl it like a spear, killing the giants. Now let's go to 1 Chronicles 20, verses 4 through 8. Now what you're going to realize is this account is about the same account that we just read in 2 Samuel, okay? And one of the fascinating things about Scripture is it does repeat itself. The stories do repeat themselves, but oftentimes there's additional information. So see if you can catch what it is. 1 Chronicles 20, verses 4 through 8. In the course of time, war broke out with the Philistines at Gezer. At that time, Sibbecai the Hushathite killed Sappai, one of the descendants of the Rephaites. Now they're calling the Rephaites. So Nephilim, Rapha, Rephaites, and the Philistines were subjugated, conquered. In another battle with the Philistines, Elhanan, son of Jair, killed Lamai, the brother of Goliath the Gittite, who had a spear with a shaft like a weaver's rod. In still another battle which took place at Gath, there was a huge man with 6 fingers on each hand, 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all. He also was descended from Rapha. When he taunted Israel, Jonathan, son of Shemaiah, David's brother, killed him. These were descendants of Rapha and Gath, and they fell at the hand of David and his mighty men. Deuteronomy 3:11. Og, king of Bashan, was the last of the Rephaites, or the last of the giants. His bed was decorated with iron and was more than 9 cubits long and 4 cubits wide. So that translates to 14 feet long and 6 feet wide. So the average person is 6 feet tall, right? So the bed is as wide as an average person is tall. Anyway, that's pretty wicked, pretty wild stuff here. So these giants, if that was the last of the giants, shouldn't be any more of them, right? Well, according to some Native American tribes across North America, they've passed down oral traditions about giants, and some of those giants are described as having 6 fingers and 6 toes. These stories often align eerily well with biblical and ancient Near Eastern accounts. Common elements in Native American giant lore. Many tribes, including the Paiute, Sioux, Navajo, Choctaw, and Hopi, tell stories like this, or the common thread is red hair, white skinned, exceptionally tall and powerful, cannibalistic, violent, and then the digits, and the extra digits and the two rows of teeth. So let's look at different specific ones. The Paiute tribe, there's a place called Lovelock Cave. The Paiutes in Nevada tell of red-haired cannibalistic giants called the Saitaka. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I didn't look that up. It's the Indian name for giants. Said to be very tall, aggressive, and nearly impossible to kill. According to legend, the Paiutes trapped them in Lovelock Cave and burned them alive. When the cave was excavated in the early 1900s, very large bones and red hair were reportedly found, though mainstream archaeology disputes some claims. Anecdotal reports mention extra digits, but not as often as size and cannibalism. All right, another example. Choctaw tribe. Choctaw tribe. They spoke of a race of giants called the Nahula. They're described as giants who came from the east and were cruel with supernatural strength. Also said to have extra digits and 2 rows of teeth. Also the Sioux and Cheyenne. Stories of star people, air quotes, and giants with physical deformities or superhuman traits. Some oral stories describe giants with 6 digits, seen as signs of divine or cursed lineage. The Navajo and Hopi, they speak of Anayi, or Anayi, which is just their name for the giants. Monstrous beings created by unnatural unions. Some have more than 5 fingers or grotesque features. Yeah, it's okay. I'm scared of the thunder and the lightning, because it's very, very frightening. Other supporting details, Spanish explorers like Coronado wrote of giants in the Americas, described by native guides. Petroglyphs and ancient carvings in places like Utah, Arizona, and Nevada depict large humanoids with 6 fingers and toes. Some mound builder skeletons, the Adena culture for example, were reportedly discovered with 6 fingers, toes, or double rows of teeth, although these finds are now disputed or lost. Ancient origins. There's an article by Ancient Origins that documents 6-toed footprints and 6-fingered handprints, Chaco Canyon area. DNA Consultants reports on Choctaw legend of the Nahula, white giants, notable for 6 fingers or double rows of teeth. That's got to be pretty creepy, the double rows of teeth. I wonder how that affects speech. Anyway, there's also rumors of why the Indians would raise their hands when they greeted one another. You know, we always say, oh. But the rumor is they raised their hands to make sure they didn't have 6 fingers, because the 6-fingered folk were dangerous. All right, as we start to wrap up, I want to tell you a story about the Kandahar Giant. In 2002, after a U.S. Army patrol in a remote part of Kandahar province went missing without making radio contact, special forces were dispatched to look for the missing men. Searching along the line of the patrol's known route resulted in them discovering discarded pieces of equipment, much of it broken. The debris led the troops to a difficult mountainous trail, which terminated at a large cave and a clearing scattered with broken equipment and cracked bones. The account then claims that a red-haired, powerfully built humanoid around 13 feet high in height and clad in animal skins emerged from the cave. On spotting the patrol, the giant promptly killed one of them, an individual specifically named in the original count as Dan, air quotes, by impaling him with a large metal-tipped spear, a weaver's rod. The rest of the patrol then killed it with 30 seconds of sustained gunfire. On inspecting the body, they found that the creature had 6 fingers on each hand and 2 sets of teeth. The giant was then reportedly collected by a Chinook helicopter and then transferred to a C-130 to be transported to an unknown location, with the members of the aircraft crew reportedly stating that it weighed 1,100 pounds. This is from Dark Tales. Diving into this study, there was a more detailed account of this event by someone called Mr. K in an interview. And that was on YouTube, but that YouTube video has been pulled. Interesting. Also, there's talk about how the giant reeked of death, a nasty funk to it. There's a lot of links that I'll put with this for you to check out. Some support it, some do not. There's 2 videos I'll put in the links. There's a lot more. But one video talks about the Lovelock Cave giants. And he kind of, I guess he kind of, well, his fact finding apparently led him to the idea that that never happened, or it didn't happen, or there's no such thing. The other video, and his video is by Go Explore Today. The other video is by Wartime Stories, and I really like that one because he not only talked about the giant of Kandahar, but he also talked about other soldiers, 7 or 8 accounts, different soldiers across different parts of Afghanistan that talk about the same thing, where they didn't have a confrontation, but they were using equipment and they were able to see these giants. Now, it was with infrared, so they weren't able to see about the red hair, but they were able to see that that was a giant. What do you think? Do you believe there's giants among us today? Do you believe the Bible? Do you believe the giants in the Bible are real? Of course, as Christians, we do. Faith over fear. Not that you're afraid of these giants. Not that you're afraid of the government covering up this kind of thing. Faith over fear. Let's look at some biblical assurances. Psalm 91 says it promises a protection from night terrors and mortal threats. Romans 8:38 through 39 says nothing, whether it's giants or government, can separate us from the love of Christ. Faith in God is our greatest defense. In closing, I'll say this. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive. I hope you enjoyed the Nephilim story. I hope you enjoyed our dive into giants past, present, and spiritual. From Genesis to Missler to Heiser to Kandahar, the message is clear. The battle is real, but our victory is secure. Giants may come in the flesh, in the mind, in the soul, but with Christ we don't back down. We stand bold, armed with His truth and covered in His grace. Are you wondering what I think? Well, if you're paying attention, you probably already know. But if you're a little slow, I'll tell you. Do I believe the story of the giant of Kandahar as told by Special Forces personnel? I do. Maybe you're saying, so where's the giant? Well, you heard the story. The government came, picked it up, took it away. Are you telling me you're going to believe in that stuff about government conspiracies and government trying to keep things secret? Why? Why haven't we seen the ark? In today's technology, why don't we know where the ark is? Why are there no pictures of it? You see, it's in Satan's best interest to keep these things that validate the Bible hidden from the rest of us, don't you think? So why do I believe the Kandahar Giant story as told by Special Forces personnel? Because my Bible tells me so. We just started out going through Scripture and talking about the giants. Do they exist today? I guess so. Go scroll through the links that I'll put up there. Check out the videos. Let me know what you think. Also, another person you need to check out is Charles Larson's sermons. One of his sermons talks about the Kandahar Giant. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's show. So make sure you subscribe, share, and stand firm, because giants fall when the truth stands tall. Until next time, stay safe.